So recently, someone reached out to me and asked for some advice from switching from a residential real estate to commercial real estate. They were in brokerage or selling of properties. Full disclosure, I am an owner operator of commercial real estate and I do not specialize in the brokering of the sale of commercial real estate. However, my wife is in residential real estate and I can see how the two worlds are very different. So I gave the following advice. The first piece of advice is that in commercial real estate, the relationships really matter. And a lot of that is because you end up dealing multiple transactions with the same people. And so you run into them very often. Where in residential real estate, they do not focus as much on repeat business. And therefore, they don't focus as much on the relationship building. And what I mean is that when I speak with residential real estate people, they're not often going to networking events. They're not often inviting potential clients out to dinner in group settings. They're not inviting them out to happy hour in group settings with the intent of building the relationship so that one day, whether it's a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that they get to transact with them at that time. However, in commercial real estate, that is really a thing. For example, I'm currently in the Tampa market and I just had dinner with 6 other commercial real estate professionals that I've known for a while. Some I've done business with and some I had not done business with. But look, we're all in it for the long game. And it's possible that I'm going to be doing business with all of them at some point. And if you are in commercial investment sales, it might not seem that important. But look, inviting a potential client out to coffee, lunch, dinner, happy hour does make a big impact, or at least it sets you a little bit further apart and gives you just a little bit of an edge. So I suggest that you do it. The other potential difference is that in commercial real estate, you are dealing with the long game and that the person that you're talking to, you may not transact with them this year and it may be several years from now. However, if you are consistent in giving forward, meaning that you're giving information, problem solving forward to them and cementing that relationship, whether it's sending news articles or understanding their pain points. Like, for example, you might have a potential commercial client that's really trying to figure out who to lease a restaurant space to, and you may know some restaurateurs that are expanding, and you may just connect the two and offer that assistance. Again, you're building the relationship because it's not just one transaction. When you're dealing in commercial, you're dealing with multiple transactions throughout the life of a career. The other piece of advice when you're dealing with commercial real estate is that these investments really are almost like mathematical equations, and you should know the investment sales math. That would be cap rate. What's a cap rate? That is the NOI divided by the price. Well, what's the NOI? NOI is your gross potential revenue minus your vacancy, which brings you to the effective gross revenue. And then you subtract your expenses, and that gets you to the NOI. So it's very important to understand the relationship between NOI, cap rate, and value. And when you're looking at investments over time, it's also important to understand what your market leasing assumptions are and your exit cap rate as well. Also, super important is knowing the story of your property. And what meaning that if you're selling a shopping center or if you're selling any commercial property, there's usually a story to it because there's income and then there's the potential growth of that income. And the question is, what's the story of the property in that you have your current income and the current state of the property, and that property is located in a community. And in 10 years, where do you see that property and where do you see that community? And those two are pretty interrelated. And being able to figure out, where are the potential ways that the investor can make money, that can add the value to the properties, and can potentially reposition the commercial real estate. The acquisitions teams are often presenting these properties to their real estate committee. Sometimes it's just one person, the owner, and they need to have the data or some of the facts or some of the interesting um, commentary so that the decision maker will get excited about the property and decide to pursue it and maybe and decide to stretch for the property and decide to pursue the property. And the last piece of advice is that you just have to be consistent. This isn't a 1 year career, it's not a 2 year career. If you get into commercial real estate, it's likely that you're going to be in it for decades. Even if it's slow in the beginning, if you're consistent and you're persistent, that really snowballs and you'll hit an inflection point and your career will just start really taking off. And that's the advice that I'd have. I've been in the real estate game for about 25 years. My name's Chen. I run a company that owns and operates shopping centers across Florida, Georgia, and Maryland. We're looking to buy some more properties. So if you are selling, send them our way. Looking for properties with at least $1 million of net operating income. All right, catch you later.